She circled my face in red and asked the internet who they'd erase from our family, while my own son stayed silent. I answered with 6 quiet words that ended their little game. This house is mine. I'm done. What followed cost them everything. And tonight, for the first time, I'll tell you how it all happened. Before I go on, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Every story I share carries a piece of my life, moments that shaped me, and lessons I learned the hard way. Your support means more than you know, so thank you, truly. My name is Tom Reed, and I've spent most of my 68 years right here in this small Ohio town. The streets haven't changed much. Same cracked sidewalks, same red maple trees that turn gold every fall, and the same neighbors who wave whether they know you or not. At my age, life slows down. I wake before sunrise, pour a single cup of black coffee, and sit by the front window, watching the sky lighten over the rooftops. There's a peace in those moments, a kind of stillness you only understand after you've lost enough things that mattered. When my wife Evelyn passed 5 years ago, silence became my new companion. I started fixing things around the house that didn't need fixing, tightening bolts, replacing hinges, patching walls that were already fine. Evelyn used to laugh and say, "Tom, you just can't sit still." Maybe she was right. Maybe I keep my hands busy because it stops my mind from wandering to places that still hurt. Our son Michael lives a few miles away, with his wife Alyssa and their 2 kids, Lily and Noah. For years, I thought I'd done everything right. We were a close family once. Sunday dinners, birthday gatherings, Christmas mornings filled with noise and warmth. Back then, Alyssa called me Dad. She'd hug me when I walked through the door and always ask if I wanted seconds. She was bright, ambitious, and loved showing off her perfect family online. I used to think it was sweet. Everyone wants to share their happiness, right? But time changes people. Sometimes, it changes what they think they deserve. 12 years ago, when Michael and Alyssa first married, they struggled like most young couples do. He was fresh out of college, just starting at a small accounting firm. She was studying for her real estate license, working part-time to cover bills that never seemed to end. Their apartment was tiny, barely room for 2 people and a coffee table. Evelyn and I had just received an inheritance from her father's estate, and one night she looked at me across the dinner table and said softly, "Tom, what if we help them? What if we give them a real start?" I hesitated. Money, in my experience, can build bridges, but it can also burn them. But Evelyn was gentle and persistent, like she always was. "We'll keep the house in our name," she said, "just until they're stable. If anything ever goes wrong, at least Michael will still have a roof over his head." It made sense. It wasn't about control. It was about protection. So we did it. We found a beautiful 2-story colonial in Worthington, 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, and a porch that caught the afternoon light just right. When we handed them the keys, Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, we can't accept this," he said. "You already have," I told him. "Just pay us enough to cover the property taxes. That's all." For a while, life was good. The house became everything Evelyn hoped it would be. A home full of laughter and little footsteps. She loved watching Lily and Noah play in the yard while she sat on that porch swing. Every time I stopped by, she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "We did good, Tom, we did good." But after Evelyn passed, things changed. Alyssa stopped calling me Dad. It became Tom. The warm welcomes turned into polite nods. The Sunday dinners grew shorter, replaced by quick visits that felt more like obligations. Still, I held my tongue. I told myself that grief changes people, that they were busy raising kids and chasing careers. I noticed something subtle over the years, how Alyssa started rewriting the story. At first, she'd tell people, "Michael's parents helped us with the down payment." Then it became, "Michael bought this house right after we got married." I never corrected her. Not once. Because I told myself the same thing every time. It's not about credit. It's about family. But when you let people erase the truth long enough, one day they forget you were part of it at all. I started feeling like a guest in my own generosity. Still, I stayed quiet, because that's what peacekeeping fathers do. You tell yourself that keeping the peace is more important than being right. You convince yourself silence is strength. Every evening, I drive past their house and watch the porch lights glow. It made me feel close to Evelyn again, like she was still there, sitting in her favorite chair, humming while she watched our son's family grow. But lately I started to notice that the warmth I used to feel was gone. Something about the house looked different, colder, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Then one afternoon, Nancy, my neighbor and old friend, showed up at my door, out of breath. "Tom," she said, holding her phone out to me, "you need to see this." On her screen was a photo of Michael, Alyssa, and the kids standing in front of that house. A perfect family portrait. Only one thing stood out: my face, circled in bright red. The caption read, "Family Game. If you could erase one person from this picture, who would it be?" I think you know my choice. For a long time I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. That photo, the home, the smiles, the people I loved, had just turned into a weapon. And the quiet peace I'd been living in for 12 long years was about to end. I stared at that photo until the lines went blurry. My own face, circled in red like a mistake that needed to be erased. Hundreds of comments poured in, each one sharper than the last. "Get rid of the old man. Why is he even in the photo? Your family would look perfect without him." And underneath it all were Alyssa's laughing emojis, heart reactions, replies like, "You said it." Every comment was a public slap across my face. But what hurt most was seeing Michael's name under the likes. My son. My boy. The man I raised to be kind, nodding along while strangers made a joke out of his father. That night I sat alone in my chair. The same chair where Evelyn used to read beside me. The same one where she once leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You've got a good heart, Tom. Don't ever let the world harden it." I could almost hear her voice. But that night her words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like a test I was failing. The next morning my phone buzzed. It was Nancy again. "Tom," she said softly, "I hate to show you this, but she posted something else." My stomach sank before I even saw it. Alyssa had posted a poll. Who ruins family gatherings more, mother-in-law or father-in-law? Underneath, vote carefully. And again, Michael had liked it. That was the moment something in me broke. Not with rage, but with disbelief. I'd given them everything. A home, a future, my trust. And in return, I got laughter. That evening, I called Michael. My voice shook, but I kept it steady. "Son, did you see what she posted?" A long pause. "Yeah, Dad. It's just a joke. Don't take it so seriously." "A joke?" I said quietly. She circled my face and asked people to erase me. "She didn't mean anything by it," he replied. "That's just how social media is." "No, Michael," I said, feeling my heart tighten. "That's not how family is." There was silence on the other end. Then he sighed, the kind of sigh you give someone you think doesn't understand. "Dad, please don't start drama." Alyssa's embarrassed. "She said your comment was uncalled for." "My comment?" I asked slowly. "You mean when I said the house she lives in is mine?" "Yes," he snapped. "That was out of line." "Out of line," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "After she publicly humiliated me?" "She didn't humiliate you, Dad. She was just joking around." "And I was just telling the truth," I said. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, he muttered, "You're being vindictive." Vindictive. That word sank deep. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. After that call, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the deed. The same document Evelyn and I had signed 12 years ago. My name, no one else's. Every payment, every tax bill, every insurance renewal, mine. The next evening, I drove to the house. The porch light was on. I still had my key. When I opened the door, Alyssa's voice rang from the kitchen. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "I live here," I said calmly, looking around. "At least that's what the paperwork says." She froze. Then her tone sharpened. "This isn't funny. You can't just walk in here anymore." "Why not?" I asked. "Because I stopped letting you rewrite history." Michael came out from the living room, red-faced and tense. "Dad, you can't do this. This is our home." "No, son," I said, pulling the folded deed from my coat pocket. "It's my home. You live in it." The air in the room changed. The kids peeked down from the stairs, their faces pale with confusion. Alyssa's smile faltered. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You bitter old man, you can't stand that we've built something beautiful here." I met her eyes. "What you built," I said softly, "stands on my foundation, and you mocked the man who made it possible." Michael rubbed his temples, trying to play the peacemaker. "Dad, let's not make this worse." "Alyssa, apologize for the post." "Dad, maybe we can talk about ownership later." But I'd had enough of being reasonable. I'd kept the peace for 12 long years, and where had it gotten me? "The ownership," I said, unfolding the deed, "isn't up for discussion. It's been settled for over a decade." And then I looked him square in the eye. "What's new, son, is that I'm done pretending otherwise." That night, as I drove home under the streetlights, I felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not fear. It was the quiet strength that comes from deciding once and for all that you won't let anyone erase you again. That's when I knew I would not stay silent. After that night, the silence in my apartment was heavier than ever. I'd always thought I understood loneliness after Evelyn passed, but this was different. Grief is when life takes something from you. Betrayal is when someone you love hands it away. I sat at my small kitchen table, the same one Evelyn and I bought when we first married. Across from me sat an empty chair, where she used to read her evening paper, humming softly under her breath. I caught myself glancing at it, half expecting her to tell me what to do. But there was only the sound of the clock, ticking through the quiet like it was counting down something I couldn't yet name. The days blurred together. Coffee at dawn, walks to nowhere, long drives past that house, the one that was still legally mine but emotionally foreign. I'd stop across the street and watch the windows glow, imagining Evelyn standing there, proud of what we'd built. Now I just saw strangers living inside a lie. Sometimes I'd think about all the ways I'd help them. The dinners I paid for when Michael's firm was struggling. The babysitting so Alyssa could go on real estate trips. The broken furnace I replaced without being asked. All the quiet, invisible things parents do because they love their children more than their own comfort. And yet, I'd been erased from the story. Reduced to a punchline on the internet. To a red circle on a family photo. At night, sleep wouldn't come. I'd lay awake thinking about every small sign I'd ignored. The way Alyssa corrected people when they said I owned the house. The way Michael went silent whenever money came up. Maybe I'd been blind because I wanted to believe my son was still the same boy who once held my hand crossing the street. The same boy who promised, "Dad, I'll always take care of you one day." But that day never came, and I realized something Evelyn used to say was truer than I'd ever understood. Love without respect isn't love at all, it's dependency. And I had allowed that dependency to grow into entitlement. One morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at my reflection under the dim yellow light. My hair was grayer than I remembered, my face older. But my eyes were clear. I whispered to myself, "Enough." That same afternoon, I called Harold Benson, the lawyer who'd handled Evelyn's estate. I told him everything, the post, the deed, the years of silence. He listened without interrupting, the way old friends do when they've seen you through enough storms to know when one's brewing again. "Tom," he said after a pause, "you're within your rights, legally and morally, but are you ready for the fallout?" "I've been living in it," I replied. "Now I'm ready to walk through it." After that call, I started digging through my old files. Every receipt, every tax document, every insurance payment. Proof of what was mine. And somewhere between the stacks of paperwork, I found an old letter from Evelyn. It was tucked inside a folder labeled Property Records. Her handwriting was neat, like always. She'd written, "If the day ever comes when kindness is mistaken for weakness, don't fight with anger. Fight with truth. Truth has its own quiet power." I sat there, holding that letter, and something inside me shifted. The anger that had burned so hot began to cool, hardening into focus. Because she was right. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand firm. That night, I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and stared at the porch light of the house I once called home. 12 years of silence. 5 years without Evelyn. And one cruel joke had finally peeled away the last illusion of peace. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to threaten. No, I was going to remind them who built the foundation they were standing on. And when the time came, I'd let the truth do the talking. I leaned back, letting the night air drift through the open window. And as the streetlights flickered outside, I made myself a quiet promise. I would not react with bitterness. I would respond with precision. That was the night the storm inside me settled into stillness. Not the calm before a storm, but the calm that becomes one. And as I closed Evelyn's letter, I whispered her words aloud one last time. Fight with truth, Tom. And that's when I began to think very carefully. The next morning, I drove downtown to Harold's office. The air was cold and sharp, the kind that wakes you up whether you're ready or not. I sat across from his polished oak desk, watching as he reviewed the deed and the paperwork I'd gathered. When he finally looked up, his expression was calm but heavy. Tom, you're in the right, he said. Legally, the property is yours. You can evict them with 30 days' notice if you want. But you should know, this will get messy. I leaned back, letting his words sink in. Messy didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was silence, pretending things were fine while they used what Evelyn and I built to mock me. Do it by the book, I said. Every step, no shortcuts. I want this clean. He nodded, pulling a yellow legal pad toward him. Then we start here. For the next hour, we laid out the plan. First, a formal notice of ownership confirmation. Then a financial audit to check for irregularities tied to the property. Finally, a quiet background investigation into how they'd been handling money. Sometimes, Harold said, paper tells stories people don't mean to write. He wasn't wrong. A few days later, the paper started talking. It began with something small, credit card charges that didn't belong to me. Subscriptions, shopping, restaurant bills in Alyssa's name. $8,000 in total, drained over 2 years. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. But the dates matched her social media posts perfectly. Every new handbag, every weekend trip, every treat-yourself caption, paid for with my card. I sat at my table, the evidence spread out like a jigsaw puzzle of betrayal. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel old. I felt awake. That same week, Harold called again. He'd uncovered something even bigger, fraudulent loans tied to my property. 3 separate applications, each using my home as collateral, signed with my name. Over $200,000. My son's name was on the paperwork. I remember gripping the edge of my chair, my knuckles white. Are you telling me my son forged my signature? I asked quietly. Harold's face softened. Yes, Tom. But I don't think he did it alone. It didn't surprise me. Not anymore. Alyssa was the type who could smile while lighting a fire. And Michael, bless him, had always been too trusting for his own good. I spent that night driving. No destination, just roads and thoughts. Every streetlight felt like another memory flickering by. Michael learning to ride his bike. Evelyn cheering from the porch. The first night we brought him home from the hospital. How did we end up here? How does love turn into theft so quietly you don't even hear it happening? But as I drove, something inside me started to click into place. Not anger, not revenge, strategy. They thought I'd fade into the background. They thought old meant powerless. They thought they could humiliate me, steal from me, and rewrite the story in their favor. But they'd forgotten who taught Michael how to think ahead, how to build plans that didn't crumble under pressure. When I pulled into my driveway, the dawn was just breaking. I took out Evelyn's letter again and read her words one more time. Truth has its own quiet power. I smiled for the first time in weeks, because now I finally understood how to use it. The next day, I met Harold again. I don't want them arrested yet, I said. Not until they see everything they built start to crumble by their own hand. He raised an eyebrow. You want to show them the truth before the law does? Exactly, I said. Let them look their choices in the eye before the world does. That's when we crafted the next step, a quiet confrontation. No shouting, no lawyers at first. Just me, the truth, and the documents that would turn their world upside down. As I left Harold's office, he called after me. Tom, are you sure you want to do it this way? It's not too late to walk away. I turned back, steady and certain. Harold, they asked the world to erase me. Now, I'll remind them whose name is written in ink. Driving home, I passed their house one last time before everything changed. The porch light was still on, casting a warm glow on the doorway where I used to stand. But to me, it didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a stage. And soon, the curtain was about to rise. They thought they'd already won, but they had no idea that the real game had just begun. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. The morning of the meeting came quietly. No thunder, no drama, just gray clouds hanging over Columbus, the kind that make you feel like the world's holding its breath. I ironed my shirt, poured black coffee into a travel mug, and took one long look at myself in the mirror. Not the broken old man Alyssa wanted the world to see, but the man Evelyn fell in love with. Calm, certain, ready. When I walked into Harold's office, the smell of polished wood and old books hit me. He was already there, papers stacked neatly on his desk. "Morning, Tom," he said, nodding. "You ready for this?" I nodded once. "Let's get it done." A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Michael and Alyssa stepped out, side by side, dressed like they were attending a business pitch instead of facing judgment. Alyssa led the way, her chin high, her perfume heavy. Michael followed, his steps slower, guilt already showing in his shoulders. They took their seats across from me. For a moment, none of us spoke. It felt like time itself was watching. Alyssa broke the silence first. "I hope this means you've come to your senses," she said smoothly. "We'd like to move past this whole misunderstanding." I let out a quiet breath. "Oh, I've come to my senses all right." Harold slid the first stack of documents across the table. Michael glanced down and froze. It was the first loan document, his forged signature. My name on the deed. Color drained from his face. What is this?" he stammered. "Proof," Harold said, "of every loan you took, every dollar you borrowed against your father's property." Alyssa's smile tightened. "You can't prove that." Patricia, the forensic accountant, who had been sitting silently beside Harold, spoke up. "We already have. The funds were deposited directly into your joint account, and then wired to your business LLC. You used them to purchase a condo in Sarasota." Alyssa's voice faltered. "That's not what it looks like." "No?" I said quietly. "Then tell me, what does it look like when your wife steals from you and your son helps her forge your name?" Michael looked at me, his eyes wet, his words broken. "Dad, I didn't know she—" I raised a hand. "Don't. You signed the papers, son. You knew enough." The room went dead silent. Even the clock on Harold's wall seemed to stop ticking. Alyssa snapped first. "You can't do this to us. You'll ruin the kids' lives. You'll destroy your own family." I met her gaze, calm as stone. "You destroyed this family the day you thought you could humiliate me and get away with it." Harold leaned forward, his voice steady. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed, you're both facing serious legal exposure. Fraud, identity theft, elder financial abuse. We're offering a settlement. Full restitution. Immediate evacuation of the property. Dissolution of the LLC. In exchange, Mr. Reed won't press charges." Alyssa laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You're bluffing." Harold didn't blink. "You have until 5 o'clock today to decide. After that, the bank and the district attorney will receive everything you see here." Michael's voice broke. "Dad, please, don't do this. We can fix it." I stared at him, heart heavy but voice even. "Fix it? You stole from me, lied to me, tried to take my house. You called me unstable. Tell me, Michael, what's left to fix?" He dropped his eyes to the table. Alyssa crossed her arms and hissed, "You'll die alone, old man." I leaned forward just enough for her to see the steadiness in my face. "I'd rather die alone than live surrounded by liars." No one spoke after that. Only Harold's clock ticked, slow and deliberate. They left soon after, Alyssa's heels echoing down the hallway, Michael following in silence. When the door shut behind them, Harold turned to me. "You did the right thing, Tom." I looked at the window, at the pale sky outside. "Right doesn't always feel good," I said softly, "but it feels clean." That evening, as the sun dipped low over Worthington, I sat on the same porch where Evelyn and I once watched Lily chase fireflies. 3 weeks later, the house was mine again, the fraudulent loans erased, the trust restored, the title untouched. Michael and Alyssa had moved into a small apartment across town. When Lily came to visit, she brought her younger brother and a box of old photo albums. She smiled shyly as she handed it over. "Grandpa, Mom said you hate her now." I smiled back, shaking my head. "Hate's a waste of time, sweetheart. I don't hate her. I just finally stopped pretending she deserved my forgiveness." Lily's eyes softened. "Dad's been different, quieter. He says he forgot what you taught him." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "Then tell him it's not too late to remember." After she left, I sat for a long while watching the sun set through the trees. The porch felt warm beneath my hands. The air smelled like Evelyn's roses again, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. No shouting, no bitterness, no need for revenge, just truth. And in that silence, I finally felt free. It's quiet now, peaceful in a way I almost forgot existed. The kind of peace that doesn't come from winning, but from letting go of everything that tried to take your worth. Most evenings, I sit on this porch with a cup of coffee, the same way Evelyn used to. The air cools as the sun slips behind the trees, and the sky turns gold, then soft gray. Sometimes, I can almost hear her humming through the open window, gentle, patient, certain. She always said, "Tom, home isn't where you live, it's where truth stays." Back then, I didn't understand, but I do now. For the first time in years, this house feels alive again. Not because it's full of people, but because it's free of lies. Every creak of the wood, every soft gust through the curtains, it all feels honest. Like the walls themselves are relieved to be standing in truth again. Michael visits on Sundays now. He doesn't say much, but he always brings coffee and fixes whatever small thing needs fixing. We don't talk about what happened. We don't have to. Sometimes silence can say everything words never could. Lily and Noah still come by too. They bring their laughter, their stories, their warmth. When I hear them running through the yard, I remember Evelyn's smile, and I know she'd be proud that love found its way back here, even after everything. People sometimes ask if I regret it. Taking back the house, exposing the truth, and I always tell them the same thing. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for respect. For Evelyn. For every parent who gave everything, only to be treated like they were nothing. The title of this story. She asked the internet to erase me, so I took back the house. It's not really about property. It's about dignity. About remembering that age doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unshakable. Evelyn used to say, "Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice." And as I sit here now, watching the light fade and the porch lamp flicker on, I finally understand what she meant. I didn't win through anger. I won through truth. And that, I think, is the only victory worth having. Would you have done the same if it were you? Tell me what you think down in the comments. And if my story spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Every story I tell carries a truth someone needs to hear. Maybe the next one will be yours.